So, folks, and welcome to Tippcast here this Wednesday with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined clever by Shane Brophy, head of sport at the Nina Guardian. Shane, how are you keeping?
Good now. Hopefully we'll have no technical problems this week, so it's a good start anyway. So
yeah, it's looking good so far. There's a big weekend of football just passed. There's a big weekend of hurling coming. We'll come to all of that shortly. But one of the first things that we want to talk about is the likelihood that Tipperary in the Munster Hurling Championship next year are going to start off with 2 away games. Clare showed that, maybe that doesn't matter so much, but is it a good or a bad thing? Like, part of me is thinking, do you know what? It lowers expectations a little bit more, which is probably a good thing for a team coming into the Munster Championship.
It probably does. But if you're looking at it coldly, you think Liam Cahill and the boys will probably want every little bit of help they can get. Maybe starting with a home game would have been great. Maybe if there's a bit of optimism after the league, you get a big crowd, big home support in. So, look, you're starting off. If the fixtures or rumours there away to Clare, full house in Ennis, probably maybe a lot of Tip fans maybe holding fire maybe and maybe being terrified of maybe the worst coming to the worst. And you think after maybe the way things petered out with Clare this year that they'll be thinking, God, if we can just finish the thing out properly, and I think Clare will feel that Aidan McCarthy back, maybe a couple of fresh faces. They're not far away from maybe Lauren Limerick's colours, and then you probably have to go. I think Tip have a bye in round 2, and then you go to Cork in round 3, and then of course finishing at home at Limerick and Waterford. And like I've said that Semple Stadium is absolutely no home advantage to Tipperary whatsoever, because every other county loves playing there because they play so often. So you effectively could be playing 4 away games. Like it doesn't really matter. The 4 matches are going to be ridiculously tough anyway. So.
Yeah. Well, the way I'm thinking of it is last time Tipperary played in Cusack Park, was it a 13-point win in 2019, something like that? If Tipperary are moving well, I think Tipperary can win those games anyway. But also it depends on fitness. We already know that there's going to be players that are injured from this year and players that aren't going to be available. So, that kind of comes with the territory. Could be the same for Clare again. What about then all the clamouring you'd see from certain people to rejig the inter-counties or the split season situation? You see some people giving out that, you miss games at this time of the year. And then other people are like, well, for example, Lee Keegan, I'm an inter-county player and I'm delighted. Tommy Doyle said the same. He's obviously a GPA rep at Westmeath. So, I mean, from a club person, actually, or both club and county person point of view, it seems like this is the ideal scenario. Let's go with the club. Let's build the club. And in another couple of years, I think the club will command more attention nationwide as more games are shown on TV.
Yeah, I know. It's just, look, people are entitled to their opinion, and good luck to them. But I just think well, for one thing, the All Ireland finals before COVID were played in August. So let's move away from this September crack altogether. That's gone. Look, I wrote a column last week in the paper. I do think it could be tweaked a small bit, maybe by I'd say no more than a fortnight, maybe the October bank holiday weekend, or the August bank holiday weekend, it does feel like that is a nice natural end to the inter-county season. I don't know if you would agree, like somewhere in around that weekend rather than mid to late July. I just think that's a nice natural endpoint. And I do think that it's something I noticed in Tipperary this year with maybe playing the first round of the club hurling and football in late July, is that an awful lot of J1 guys weren't back. Whereas if you give maybe the club championship a start, maybe say first weekend, second weekend in August is going to start, the vast majority of guys will be back then at that stage, and then you have a clean run. Maybe a later finished inter-county and a slightly later start to the club, I think would be the perfect balance in terms of keeping everyone.
Yeah, maybe 2 weeks, and like the inter-county championship season needs a little bit more time to develop. I think it's just a little bit too rushed. So, but I'd be taking those weeks off the league, the inter-county league, because as I've said before,
I just see there's an interest in. Was it in the Examiner that one of the suggestions is they're going to get rid of the league finals, which I particularly in football I have no problem with, because I think once with the team that finishes top should win. And once promotion and relegation decided in the bottom divisions, nobody really is interested in the league finals. It's really more of an annoyance game rather than anything else.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much agreed on that. Get your comments in and let us know what you think of the situation, what you think would be the best setup moving forward. The Tipperary Senior Hurling Championship quarterfinals are obviously going to go ahead this weekend. We're both pretty buzzing for them. I suppose we'll talk about them in order, but just list them out first of all. On Saturday, Drummond and Loughmore, they're going to meet at 4:00. I think that's on RTE. Kilruane McDonagh against Toomevara, Upperchurch Drumban against JK Brackens, and Kildangan against Clonoulty Rossmore. There's plenty of other games down through the tiers as well, but all those games are going to be streamed as well. So let's just start off with Drummond against Loughmore. Do you see this as the tie it around? I've seen it being billed this way in certain places, and it's very easy to find star names there with Seamus Callan and Noel McGrath.
Yeah, look, it's easy to see why RTE chose it. I suppose no more than what they chose Coola and Killer McCud with the star names. Like, look, if you're a non-Tipperary person, you see Seamus Callan and Noel McGrath. I suppose the star names in a game like this. Like you'll tune in. Pity that John McGrath won't be there, but look, I think there's an awful lot in this game to suggest that it's going to be really tight. Look, for all of that, Loughmore without John McGrath, without Ed Connolly, they're still unbeaten in the group stage, and their only loss in the hurling championship this year it was against Drum in the first round of the mid back in late June, and of course, Loughmore didn't have Noel McGrath that night either. Didn't have Kieran Connolly. They were missing a couple more guys, and I just think if there's and Loughmore were very, very competitive that night. I think Drum only pulled away in the last 5 or 6 minutes. So look, both teams will have coming on an awful lot since then. I think Drum wouldn't really have known maybe how good they were, and to come through a group with Borrisley and Templederry and Thurles was no mean achievement. But I suppose if you were to be a little concerned about Drum is that when it came to the mid-final against Brackens, when the focus was on them to win, they weren't able to do it. And I just feel maybe this is another game where the focus is on them. They're the favourites. They're the team coming in with momentum, and like no better team to maybe put a spoke in the wheel than Loughmore. And I just think if Drum were to go on and win the whole thing out, I think if they were to get through this weekend, I think they'd get an awful lot of confidence and belief. If you're able to beat Loughmore, you're good enough to win it out, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, so like Drummond didn't need to beat Borrisley the last day out. It would have taken a combination of results really to affect them. So it's probably no surprise that they weren't as free-flowing as they had been in the previous two games where they put up big scores against SARS and Templederry. Is there any concern that maybe they took the foot off the pedal a little bit and mightn't be able to get up to full speed again? Or you think, geez, brilliant that they still won despite not being at full tilt?
I don't know. I thought they were at full tilt. Like I wouldn't play it down. Like I think I always give a club an awful lot of credit where maybe they don't actually need to win, but they still go out and win anyway. Like so on. Like they were at full strength. They're still. I know you saw a lot of that game. I thought they look a very, very powerful team, don't they? Like particular half back line, they're very, very athletic. There's a nice balance to them between youth and experience. And I suppose, look, it'd be interesting to see how their half back line go. Like Fintan Purcell, Podge Campions had a great campaign. Johnny Campion in the middle of the field. You're probably looking for him maybe to press these claims for a Tipperary spot next year. And you have youth and experience up front as well. Like great to see the likes of Tommy Nolan having a good campaign. He was a great underage player, sort of drifted away, and now he's back. And look Seamus Callan looks rejuvenated, looks invigorated this year. It's the best I've seen him play at club level for a long number of years.
Yeah, well, look, I'm obviously a huge fan of Callan, but I would have thought that David Corbett held him pretty well in the Thurles game, and Ray McCormick did quite well. Obviously, he had a couple of late scores when you needed him. So, I mean, you could look at that as him stepping up when you need it. So, I mean, there's obviously two ways to look at that. And I'm not questioning what he can be.
Drum are at a stage where they don't, and they can't afford to need Seamus Callan to be winning a match on their own, which is it's a great sign that they have a better balance throughout their team. They're not relying on him or on Johnny Ryan to to be doing an awful lot of scoring.
Yeah, I mean, we know that John McGrath got man of the match 7 weeks in a row last year between the two codes. How much is he going to be missed this weekend? And do you think the 110 to 11 points win over Kilsheal and Kilcash last weekend, and just basically the dual commitments will take, between that and the injuries, will it take much out of them heading into this game and make Drum favourites?
I don't think so. Like, I just think, I know the last Willie Evereston limped out of the Kilsheal match, but listen to Frankie McGrath on the radio. They're hopefully he'll be there. John Maher didn't play last weekend. He had a bit of a niggle, so I'm sure. Look, they had half an eye on the match this week. I just think it's incredible the way that more like they can maybe afford to maybe not rest, but they can afford to gamble and play maybe John McGrath off the bench in a football match, and they're still able to win. It just shows the depth of the panel. Like they're really next man up, and that's not to say that that's not to say that they won't miss the likes of John McGrath. They're finding a way. Like, and I did think with John out, and I thought it was fascinating, particularly in the Brackens game, and I think they did it against Anacarty, that they played Brian McGrath in the half forward line. So that didn't expecting a sort of a fringe guy to replace John McGrath is not the way to go. So you've sort of got to maybe, do we put another power, one of the big names up front to maybe get maybe one of the fringe guys maybe to man the defence, and it seems to be working for them. Like they won't let this get into a shootout as far as I'm concerned. I think that there might be a little difficulty, but I think this is going to be immensely tight. So it's just a lot more whenever they're beaten, whenever they're going to be beaten again in Tipperary, it's just going to be very, very narrow. Like, and look, they can win this weekend. I fancy Drum slightly, but would I foresee? Would it be surprised if Lockmore won? Not a bit in the slightest. Because I do think a lot of pressure.
I mean, we know Brian O'Mara.
Even though Lockmore are the defending champions, there's probably more pressure on Drum maybe to win this weekend, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, in terms of players who've come back from America, like all the reports that Brian O'Mara played really well for Holy Cross in his few games there. I haven't seen Lockmore play in the flesh this year, but in terms of Kieran Connolly, has he hit the ground running since coming back, do you know?
He only came off the bench against Anacarty the last 15 minutes in their last group game, and he scored 2 points from play. Like he is carrying, I think is it a groin problem for him from last year, and there's rumors that he, whenever the season is over, that he's going to have to get it dealt with, which maybe puts his chances of maybe playing with Tip next year in jeopardy. But look, it's good to see him back playing with the club, and I'd be surprised if maybe he doesn't play. Maybe he mightn't start, but he won't play a major part in the game at the weekend.
Yeah, Kilruane McDonough's and Toomevara is a very tasty fixture. I like when Craig Morgan went down with the cruise ship for Kilruane. I suppose part of me was thinking that could be their goose cooked this year. But obviously they're still in the hunt here, and then you've some of the big dogs are out, the likes of Nina and Turles, and I suppose I'll mention Burris Lee because they won it a couple of years ago as well, but obviously weren't playing that well this year. But all of a sudden, I suppose anyone in here feels like they can win it, but just because Kilruane have been so close and in semi-finals and stuff like that over recent years, maybe they feel it's their chance now.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they do. Like it's like I think this game is going to be an awful lot closer than people are thinking. I think if from a Toomevara perspective, if when they were looking at the potential teams that were going to get in a quarterfinal, I think they would have picked Kilruane not because they're the weakest, but I think traditionally Toom have always had a very, very good record over Kilruane, and while Kilruane might be the higher seeded team, and going on record from the group stages, you probably think Toomevara potentially are maybe the weakest team out of the 8 that's left. But like Toom will think they have enough firepower if they get Jack Delaney, Mark McCarthy, Kevin McCarthy to have a big game in the forwards, Jason Ryan, Andrew Ryan in defence. They'll feel that player for player they're as good, if not better, than Kilruane. Now, well, I think Kilruane maybe have more match winners if Jerome Cahill, Niall O'Mara, Keane O'Kelly, Jack Peters, if they all fire, I think, and bring Seamus Hennessy, bring top-notch performances in Kilruane, will probably win. But there's just, I think at this thing, I've tipped Toom in my preview that I just think there's something nagging me back in my head that Toom Toom are going to bring something this weekend, and it's all it could be is tradition. Like, and this is not downplaying Kilruane's ability. Just something in my head says Toom's tradition might just rise them to a big performance this weekend.
Yeah. Do you think Toom have shown the form though? I mean, between their 3 games, scored a total of 77 points. Like that's not huge shooting in every game. And lost the last one out 116-16 against Upperchurch, and we're a little bit shy up front. Yeah,
no, their form is, you'd say, purely on form. You think they're rightfully underdogs. Like they had a good win over Burris in the North quarter final. They were very, very competitive with Killadangan in the North semi. Probably left just faded in the last few minutes. Mullinahone drew a game they had control of, should have won. Then the Holy Cross match, behind for long stretches, but got a good run towards the end and got ahead. I think that win over Holy Cross is looking better. I think Holy Cross were getting better as the year went on. Just Toom hit it right. And look, that defeat Upperchurch, it was a filthy Saturday afternoon in Thurles, like, so not great conditions. And look, Upperchurch, we've seen they're in Bocos, they're very, very hard to beat. So look, I think there's no doubt that their form line could be better, but that's not to say it maybe over the last 3-4 weeks they would have upped the intensity and train and really focused and knuckle down. And I just don't know, there's something in me thinks that they could win it. I think Kilruane are rightfully favourites, but they really can't afford to look past Toomevara, and I look they won't do that. There's too much of a traditional rivalry between these two. And look, this potentially could be the game of the weekend. These two could draw the very, very best out of one another. Like, even though maybe of the 4 quarters, maybe it's the one coming in under the radar compared to other games, but it could lead to be the best game of the weekend because a lot of rivalry there. They're board neighbouring clubs, know each other from school. That there could be a little bit of needle to it, which would be great as well.
No, it definitely would. Like, I'm looking at some of the players who could do a bit of scoring for Toomevara, and like David, can't remember his surname now all of a sudden. David Young, obviously David Young. He's been important when I've seen him in the forward line this year. Jack Delaney obviously has scores in him, the 2 McCarthy's. But so Toom do have scores in him. But if you look at the other side and you think Keane Darcy, Jerome Cahill, like, to me, if Toomevara want to win, it's nearly going to be turning it into a war and making sure those lads don't have open country to run into.
Oh yeah, no. Like as I said, if Kilruane probably have the more high-profile star name players, or if they hit their top game, they'll be hard to beat. It's just that I do like Toom. I do think Toom will maybe I wouldn't be surprised if they go man for man with certain players, especially like Jerome Cahill, maybe Keane Darcy, that they'll pick on maybe a couple of key players to keep them quiet. And look, if they can keep their influence negligible and I suppose maybe get one of those day of days from maybe the likes of Mark McCarthy, Jack Ryan, or Jack Delaney, a couple of those players and David Young, great experience head there as well, that they couldn't turn it their way.
You're thinking Toomevara will win this, aren't you?
Just, I don't know, I have a nagging feeling that they'll find a way to win it. The form from the group stage suggests otherwise, but it's just, I don't know. I could be completely wrong, but there's something Sean me said they're going to do it.
Yeah, Paul Tierney, he's referring back to the first match again. Lockmore may watch out for Owen Collins in goals, monster points. Jamie Maloney, another on form, was in around tips squads in the past. Get your comments in. Let us know what you think, how the games will go this weekend. In those 2 games so far, I think that Drum could just sneak the first one, and I think Kilruane could get it done. It's the fact that it's in Semple Stadium as well. Semple should be suiting their style of player. On Sunday then, Upperchurch Drumban against JK Brackens, a battle of the mid. 2 weeks in a row, they played in the football last week. Upperchurch got through. Does it play any part in what we're going to see this weekend? Was there any needle in the game?
Not that I'm aware, but I suppose the final result would have been a turn up for the form books. Like you had Brackens would have been probably had a greater recent tradition, and Upperchurch are building year on year. I suppose for Upperchurch to get to their first football semi-final, there'll be an extra pep in their step this weekend, and I'm sure they'll be thinking, like, I suppose a club probably would have spent a lot of their time maybe lower end to senior, intermediate, like to think that they're 60 minutes away from for a double senior hurling football semi-final. And I do think, and on top of that, if Upperchurch didn't need any extra motivation, is that they lost to Brackens in the mid semi-final a few months ago, and of course Brackens went on and won their first mid-title, and Upperchurch are still waiting on their first mid-title. They're actually thinking, God Almighty, like these boys are after sneaking in and winning the divisional title we craved, and maybe after denying him a football would be great. Maybe if we got him back in hurling and got to another hurling semi-final. And I suppose, look, their form, look, they've won, I suppose, potentially, group-wise, it probably wasn't the strongest group that Upperchurch, Holy Cross, Toom, and who else is in that group? Mullinahone. It wasn't the strongest group, but Upperchurch won their 3 games. They did their business, 3 wins out of 3. Look, it's hard in such an ultra-competitive championship to win your 3 games out of 3 was impressive. They also beat Thurles in the mid-championship as well. So, look, they've been very, very good. Brackens, be interesting to see with the disappointment of last weekend. Will that have impacted them a bit? It's interesting for me out of this game will be how Bracken set up. Because I thought against Nina, when they went man for man, they didn't play the sweeper. When they went man for man, Paddy Cadell in the middle of the field, played 6 forwards. They looked an awful lot better. But maybe the fact that both teams are familiar with each other from playing each other twice this year, hurling and football, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a bit of a tactical stalemate. It could be low score, and it could be, the way sometimes you see games where they're so familiar with each other, they cancel each other out.
Yeah. But in terms of like the scoring threat, Upperchurch, of course, have they've Paddy Green, who scored that goal against Toom the last day. Jack Butler, I thought was. Yeah, the Shanahan's and like Jack Butler. Yeah, and I thought Jack Butler was a very good target man. Whereas the other side of it, JK Brackens arguably have the best forward left in the championship in terms of like who would Liam Cahill be looking at last year in terms of their form. Like Andrew Ormond is like on fire as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Shane Burke scored 2-2 the last day, and the other inside forward as well, Lyndon
Fairbrother has good for frees. Yeah, so
and then you have Shane Doyle.
Yeah, Shane Doyle, who you don't want to concede a sideline cut within 65 yards of goal. Like I think he's up there with Joe Canning as being one of the best. He's just so accurate for them. He's brilliant at them. Like so, it's a massive opportunity for both teams. Like both, probably 2 of the less hurled senior teams. One of them is going to be 60 minutes away from a county final at the end of the weekend. Like so, I'm going to stick my neck out and I'd say Upperchurch will do the double. Will do a quarter-final double. I do think maybe the fact that Brackens probably upset them in the mid-quarter final will mean that, or mid-semi-final will mean that they're fully focused, and maybe if there was any maybe softness after beating Sarsfield, thinking we'd take Brackens and maybe they were caught out. I don't think they'll be as caught out this time.
Yeah, I was just so impressed by how JK Brackens dealt with the Nina fixture that I can't really go against them here. I can imagine that we will have players sitting back. We'll have Gavin Ryan trying to protect the D at one end for Upperchurch and Paddy Cadell doing it at the other end. And maybe we won't get as many goals as we expect because Upperchurch will have to mind the house because of the scoring threats we've already talked about. But I don't know, the way Brackens got through that game, I kind of would just about be leaning towards them, but puck of a ball in it anyway. Could go either way.
It's like that. I think all 4 games this weekend are potentially puck of a ball games, and that's brilliant. Like to get away from the days where maybe, remember it 6-7 years ago where you had Thurles Sarsfields in a semi-final and you knew they were going to win by 10 points. It's great to have 4 such tight. You could get maybe 1 or 2 blowouts this weekend, but look, that can happen maybe where maybe a team just freezes on the day, it just doesn't show up, or maybe another team just brings a brilliant performance. But as we see it now, I think all 4 are puck of a ball matches.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Like you couldn't call these games, you probably couldn't call the semi-final or the final. It just feels really wide open, which is brilliant. And in some ways, the game of the weekend could potentially be Clonoulty Rossmore against Kildangan. I mean, my favourites to win it out from here would probably be Kildangan just about. But I think basically everyone in Tipperary who isn't affiliated with one of the clubs left would like Clonoulty to do it.
Yeah. No, it's going to be a poignant, I suppose, Sunday for Clonoulty, like their first time back in the Semple Stadium since Dylan Perk, I suppose, fell to the ground that night and ultimately passed away 6-7 weeks ago. So look, I suppose from their point of view, they knew that they were going to have to go back in there sometime, and I'm sure, look, there's probably going to be, I'd say, nearly every person from Clonoulty is going to be in there just to be there to help the players. And I'm sure that first 5-10 minutes is going to be tough for them. I suppose maybe the warm up as well, and they'll have things going through their minds. And I suppose potentially maybe that's where Clonoulty could maybe be vulnerable a bit. Like, if I'm sure Kildangan will be priming, if these boys are anyway vulnerable mentally in the early going, this is a chance where maybe we get maybe 5, 6, 7 point head start if we're on it. But Kildangan have their own focuses too. Like I say, they've been good without being great in the championship this year. The hurling fits and starts. They probably haven't had a settled team between maybe guys away and coming back late from holiday J1s and injuries. And it'll be interesting to see how they've used the last 3 weeks after the group stage, where they could have gone away and maybe had everybody back together. You have Willie Connors getting better, fitter game on game. Declan McGrath's coming back. Billy Seymour's back. Who else? Dan O'Mara's had his injury troubles. Like, I think it'd be fascinating to see from Kildangan what Dara Egan and his selectors perceive as their best 15 now, because they've used 21 players, like John O'Mara's come in, Tom O'Mara, Dara Butler, because I suppose guys have been away and they needed new guys to come in. So they will have had the last 3 weeks to try and figure out, okay, as good as maybe some of the guys that have come in have been, are they as good as the guys that have come back in from abroad? And what is their best? Are they going to go with the guys that started the campaign? Or are they going to go with the guys that are in form now? So I think that's as interesting for me as what the starting 15 for Kildangan will be at the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's only 4 years since Clonoulty Rossmore won the county title, but Kildangan in the last couple of years are very used to being at this stage of the season. They've been in finals, they've obviously won a final. So I think to some degree, they're probably a team that feel like they'll be able to produce when it's required, because generally they've kind of been so competitive over the last few years. So that's why I'd be sort of leaning towards them. But like, they also have a great spread of scores. You've outlined a lot of the names there, and even Joe Gallagher. I'm not sure if you mentioned him as well.
Joe Gallagher and Ty Gallagher's having a brilliant. He's arguably their player of the year this year.
Yeah, and then the other thing is the way they went behind against JK Brackens in that final group game, but completely managed the game from then on out. They just took over the game. I thought that was really impressive. But Clonoulty looked very good against Thurles, and I know there was like a contentious enough penalty at the end of the game. Stephen Ferncombe belted it in. But they have forwards up there that are causing bother. Like Jack Ryan is playing great stuff from what I've seen. Cathal Burke back from the Crucial. He scored 5 from play. He was excellent. Then you still have John O'Keefe, Enda Heffron, players like that who are all stepping up. So there's a lot of quality across the field for Clonoulty.
And like there's a couple like Danny Slattery he's only 18, 19 years of age. I've been very, very impressed with him this year. He's always good for 2 or 3 points. Like Stephen Ferncombe was a tip minor a couple of years ago. Great things expected of him. I know he had he went focusing maybe on rugby for a while. I'm not sure whether he still is doing a bit of rugby or whether he's now focused on hurling. Like, if he's back on fully focused on hurling and he gets back to his top ability, he's another one. And look, this is the time of the year where maybe if there's lads abroad, that you fly them back, and rumours that maybe the Conor Hammersley might come home this weekend, and if you have him probably starting or coming off the bench is another option there as well. Like, so it's look, they definitely have a scoring threat to trouble Kildangan, and they have a physicality to trouble Kildangan. Remember, was it that 2018 campaign where Clonoulty won? They beat Kildangan in the quarter final in Dolla, and they they suffocated them. Like, and I thought that was the first team I saw really putting the clampers on. Like Kildangan, when they were very good for years, they moved the ball so quick. They always have an option. But Clonoulty that day really put the clamps on them, and it'd be interesting to see whether Clonoulty could do that again on the wide open space in Simple Stadium.
So which way are you leaning towards here?
Shading it Kildangan's way, but then again, you could see an inspired Clonoulty. It's one of those days where you could see Clonoulty being inspired back on Simple Stadium. I suppose every day they're going out, they're doing it for Dylan, but maybe the fact that they're back in the stadium for the first time since he died, there could be maybe an extra big intensity in their play. Like, so, it's a puck of a ball game for me. It could go either way, but Kildangan just they're getting my nod at the moment.
Yeah, well, I suppose when you talk about in those terms and the players going back to that pitch, it is very heavy stuff, and there's a lot of goodwill behind them, and rightly so. In terms of prediction, I mean, I have already said that my tip for the county title at this stage is Kildangan, so I'd be slightly edging them to win this one here. In the relegation semi-final, Erogan Carty will meet Moycarkey Burris, and Mullinahone will do battle with Templeberry Kenyans. How do you expect those to go?
Anacarty or something else. I think this is between hurling and football over the last 3 seasons, it's their 5th, if not their 6th relegation playoff series they've ended up in, and they've survived every one of them. Last weekend they beat Aherlow in the football semi-final after extra time, the relegation, so they're safe there again. So probably the safe bet is they're probably going to, if they don't survive this weekend, they'll survive to come to the final. I don't know. I find the fact that maybe extra time was needed last weekend, maybe Moycarkey might be fresher. They have a bit, maybe a younger spine to their team. Maybe Moycarkey to shade this one. The other semi-final, Templeberry are playing Mullinahone. I think Mullinahone have struggled a bit this year. They lost a couple of players to injury in the last group game, and a guy saw enough of Templeberry against Thurles in their last group game that they lost. They said even if they were maybe if Templeberry were in another group, they could have snuck a win or two and got to a quarter final. But I think they've showed enough in that maybe that they'll have enough to beat Mullinahone and survive this weekend. Yeah,
but like for Moycarkey, would they have expected to kick on a little bit more this year? And now that they're in relegation, sometimes that sinking feeling can sit in.
Yeah, look, they had the bad loss against Kilruane, but they came back and they beat Nina. And then I suppose, look, they were probably in some ways, they were on a hiding to nothing in that match against Clonoulty, the first game Clonoulty played after Dylan Kirk's death. And you probably think whatever happened that day, the word Clonoulty were going to find a way to win. Like so, and maybe bar the Kilruane performance, Moycarkey's displays haven't been that poor, and that if they're not too maybe disappointed of not maybe not getting out of the group stages, that they'll find a way to win. Because look, they won the County Under 21A last year. They won the Minor A mid-championship last Monday night, beating a very, very good Holy Cross team. Look, Moycarkey's better days are coming, so look, they just need to hold on to their senior status this year, because the next few years, I don't know doubt they're going to get better and better.
Yeah, so like you said, then Templeberry going well. It's been a bad year for Mullinahone, hasn't it? Really?
Yeah. I suppose they just haven't kicked on. Injuries haven't helped them, but look, they're going well in the intermediate football. They got through to a semi-final, so maybe that over the last few weeks that they've been able to get a bit of momentum from that. But look, in terms of hurling, look, they haven't been going well. Lost the South final to the Swan. I suppose that controversial draw with Thurles was arguably, I suppose they haven't. They lost to Upperchurch. They lost to Holy Cross. They lost to Holy Cross very, very heavily in their last game. So I think I do fancy maybe Templeberry if they're both Templeberry. I just thought even in their defeats, they have lost both. They lost their 3 games. I just thought they showed enough in their 3 games, and they were in a very tough group that if they might have enough for Mullinahone.
So the Premier Intermediate hurling quarterfinals are on this weekend as well. Cashel Kincormacs will meet Burgess in Bursley at 2:00 on Saturday. Gortnahoe Glengool meet Portroe after that, also in Bursley at 3:45. Do you think this is the year now that Cashel Kincormacs can kick on and get themselves promoted? Because there's loads of talent there.
They do. I'm just wonder, have they enough experience? That's the only thing is nagging at me. Like, they have loads of talent. The Browns, the Ryans, the Bonners, like they're dripping with. Paddy Fahey's another one that's having a great campaign. But they wouldn't want to take Burgess lightly here. Like, Burgess they've had 2 wins on the bounce now against St. Mary's and then against Clonakilty. They're a team. They're gathering a bit of momentum. They're battle hard. Look, they were only seniors a couple of years. They were only senior a couple of years ago. So Stephen Murray's playing well. Donna Maher's turning well. Stephen Kilruane. So like Michael Ryan, great. They're battle hardened. They're teeth tough, and I think if Cashel come through this one, it'll set them up well for the rest of the championship. It's like they'll get nothing soft off Burgess this weekend. I think it's a great chance for Cashel, because the sooner Cashel get up to senior with such a young panel, like the longer you're stuck in a grade, or maybe psychologically you think you're better than you are, it's harder to get out of it. So I think it's a big game for Cashel. I fancy them to come through, but I wouldn't be shocked at the slightest if Burgess won it either.
Yeah, and the way you talk about Burgess in terms of, like, you know, experience, gritty, I'd be thinking something similar for Portroe, and that's what they'll present to Gortnahoe.
Yeah, definitely. I think this has been the hardest one to call for me this weekend, because of these 4 quarterfinals, because I think Gortnahoe had a very, very good group campaign. Beat Kilruane, beat Thurles Sarsfields, beat Ballina, comfortable, but and a lot like Burgess, I think if they get through Portroe this weekend, they'll think, God, we can go on and win the whole thing, because like there's one thing in Portroe, they'll fight with their backs, and plus that they're very, very talented. They draw the very, very best out of themselves. Like and this is a Portroe team that has evolved over the last few years. They're getting more and more young guys through, like, and they're not relying on the John Sheedys anymore. It's the Sam Maddens, it's the Rowan Mulrooney's, the AJ Willises, it's the young guys that are driving on. Robert Byrne in defence, Michael Breen in defence. But then on the other side you have Ronan Tehan, Cian Hayes, Kevin Slattery, Brian Maher of Gortnahoe. I think this is so tight to go. I went for Portroe on the basis that every time I don't tip Port, they win, and they make me look like a fool. So I went for them this time, but another one wouldn't surprise me if Gortnahoe won it either. I think this is a game that could go all the way to extra time or even penalties.
Yeah, but you don't need help to look like a fool. None of us do, really.
No. That's why we do the verdicts. Like, what does this lad know? I'm sure I'm helping some club in some way capacity when I don't tip them.
Yeah. Roscrea meet Thurles on Sunday in Toom at 1:00, and St. Mary's meet Silvermines in Holy Cross at the same time. I was just thinking there, for Roscrea, the notion of losing to the B team of another town, that would be a very bitter pill to swallow, and surely that's fair motivation in itself.
It is, but it's pressure too. I remember when was it 2 years ago, Laura played Thurles Sarsfield's second team as they were in the Oreen Cup, and we were beaten by 3 points. And no, just like psychologically, it's fierce demoralizing to think that your club's first team and a traditional club, my own club would have seen itself as to lose to a second team, or even a powerhouse like Thurles. It's psychologically, it's tough. And like, as I said in my preview this weekend, like, this fixture is dripping with senior tradition, isn't it? We say Roscrea versus Thurles Sarsfields, but it's Roscrea's. This is in the second tier, but it's Roscrea's first team. Like, and I think like Thurles will come in this game absolutely no pressure whatsoever, and that's what makes them very, very dangerous. Look, they beat Kilruane in the last round when they weren't expected to, so there's no reason why they can't beat Roscrea either. But I think maybe Roscrea they'll probably be more I've been forewarned after what happened to Kilruane by Thurles, so they're familiar with the pitch in Toomevara, but so are Thurles, so that means nothing either. Toomevara would have played, or Thurles have played there a lot over the last few years, so I just think maybe the return of Valentine, and maybe from injury the last few games, he's been getting more and more game time. Maybe the last 3 weeks will have given him a chance to get his fitness levels up, and he gives them an out ball in either centre or full forward that they've probably been looking at, just to take the pressure off the likes of Luke Cashin and Shane Fletcher and Evan Fitzpatrick. Maybe this is where maybe Ross Gray could come through, but I think this will be, again, 2, 3, 4 points. If Ross Gray are to win it, it'll be no more than that. Like this is too good of a Thurles team. And look, we've seen Thurles' A team. Well, you say not get to the knockout stages, and this Thurles' second team, there's a lot of young lads on this team that maybe the Thurles senior management will have to think next year, we've got to maybe bring these guys through. Like, there's an awful lot of guys playing on their A team there for a long time, and they're not getting there anymore, if you know what I mean. They've been great soldiers, but they probably do need an influx of youth from maybe their senior B into their senior A team to get Thurles maybe back to the knockout stages, their A team at senior level going forward.
Yeah, so St. Mary's and Silvermines, you can't help but notice the likes of Seamus Kennedy and Jason Ford on the team sheets here. And
yeah,
I'm sure Kennedy will get a man.
I'd be shocked if there's not a man-marking duel between those two. I just think St. Mary's will think if we keep Jason to a certain level, and we know how good Seamus Kennedy is at man-marking at inter-county level, I think St. Mary's, if we keep Jason to a certain... Sorry?
He did it to Tony Kelly, even when Tip were on the back foot.
St. Mary's will think, if we keep Ford to a certain score, and if Silvermines go on and beat us, if they get Michael Corcoran or the McKelveys to have a serious game where they shoot the lights out, say fair play to them, that Traces or Mary's will think we have enough, maybe a Peter McGarry and Sean Kennedy at other end of the field, and some more of those Ross Peters. We'd have enough maybe at the top end of the field maybe to beat them. But look, Silvermines are so battle hardened this year. They've played 3 extra time games in the championship this year, winning 2, including the Swan in the last round. So they're not, if not teaked off the mines at this stage. I fancy Mary's slightly, but just the way Silvermines have been so hard to beat in the championship this year, wouldn't surprise me if they produced another narrow extra time winning performance again. Like, it just is again a lot like the senior A or the senior quarterfinals. Some of these 4 preliminary quarterfinals are they're finely balanced. You could see all 8 teams winning, and just again it just highlights the competitive nature of the Tipperary Championships at the moment. There's no real weak. The last 8 in all the grades look very, very tough. Very, very competitive.
Yeah, certainly do. And I wouldn't be shocked to see Peter McGarry promoted to senior ranks within Tipperary sooner rather than later. No, he's young. I know he's
young. Yeah, he's another year at under 20 level. Yeah. So I'm not sure whether we're at a stage, but then maybe if we're at a stage where we have to fast forward some player development, but maybe we have to carry an under 20 on the senior squad. It'd be interesting to see what Liam Cahill thinks.
Yeah, well, if Glenavon were playing a 13-year-old in senior soccer the other day, and Arsenal played a 15-year-old the other day as well, you just don't know. Obviously, that's apples and oranges. But Premier Intermediate Hurling Relegation semi-finals, just to go through them briefly. Kildangan B against Newport, and the other one is Ballina against Carrick Swan. How do you see them going?
Yeah, you'd probably think if Newport should overcome Kildangan, but again, like, Newport have sort of been up and down, very yo-yo performances this year. Kildangan have been very, very competitive, even for all the players their senior team have used. So I still think Newport will have enough to survive. Ballina and the Swan, very, very tight. Ballina have probably been very disappointed for me. I think they've had so much. There's so much players of potential. It just hasn't worked out. But look, Stephen O'Brien is back. Played very well for the footballers last weekend. Maybe his presence might be enough for them to improve this weekend. I think maybe I'm fancying the Swan maybe to survive this weekend, and maybe it could be a Ballina Kildangan relegation final. But then these relegation matches, there's so much pressure loaded on them. You just don't know which teams might respond positively or negatively to that pressure.
Yeah, so Kilsheelan Kilcash against Borlahan Douala in the intermediate preliminary hurling quarter-final. Kilsheelan obviously lost in the football last weekend. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, it's I suppose the last of the preliminary quarter-finals, we'll know the last day. I suppose a lot of the intermediate clubs are more than my own situation with Nora we're just waiting. I suppose Kilsheelan got to the final last year. Probably haven't fired fully this year. But now they're out of football and they're able to focus fully on the hurling. I think that they'll take, and if they get through this weekend, they'll be hard to beat. If they're able to just focus on one code. I thought Borlahan saw them last time round against Ora. I thought they were very, very good, and they were missing players that time through injury and other things. So maybe over the last 3 weeks, if they're able to get guys back, they'll be stronger for that too. Just in the fact that Borlahan have, like, it's the South against the mid champions. Just in the fact that maybe again, toss of a kind game. Like, it's there's lots. I went for Borlahan slightly, but because I just thought that I was impressed with what they did. But look, the greater maybe pedigree of the last few years suggests Kilsheelan, but again, toss of a kind game as well. Like, so.
Yeah, Ballynahinch and meet Ballybacon Grange in one of the intermediate hurling relegation semi-finals, and Carrickdavins meet Shannon Rovers as well. Those games are on Saturday and Sunday, respectively. What are you expecting?
Yeah, I think Ballynahinch will probably do enough. They're getting better. They've improved through the summer, even though they find themselves in relegation. I think they should be okay. I think Shannon Rovers, Davins, very, very finely poised. I know I tipped the Rovers in my preview, but there was a great spirit in that Davins club, and like even the night that they lost to Laura, like they were in an awful situation after 20 minutes. You think they could have lost by 30 or 40 points, but they dug in and they fought back well in the second half, and like they were very competitive against Borlahan and Golden. So I'd say more pressure is on the Rovers to win this one. I wouldn't be shocked if the Davins snuck it, but given I suppose maybe a parochial nod to the Rovers, but it's not a confident one.
Okay, and then I'm not sure if you want to. Will I go through the last couple of junior games as well?
I just read the fixtures. I suppose it's a lot of hurling on this weekend.
Yeah, Latin Cullen are meeting Thurles Sarsfield's third team, I presume. Upperchurch Drumban second team against Galtee Rovers, Mile Rovers against Borrisolee's second team, and Toomevara's second team against Grange Mokler Ballyneal. The Camogie's on this weekend as well. The quarterfinals, Burgess Duhara against Aero Anacarty, and Clonoulty will do battle with Thurles. So
I suppose that the Camogie's been going on pretty well over the last couple of weeks. I suppose, look, I think we've got to the knockout stages with the 6 teams we thought that would get there. So that's what Drummond-Inch and Cashel have progressed straight to the semi-finals. So we have the 2 quarterfinals this weekend. Burgess Duhara going pretty well now, nicely in the group stages. They won 3 games out of 4, only lost to Cashel by a point. So they have home advantage against Anacarty in the quarterfinal. I think they'll come through that one. Anacarty, very, very, have had some great underage success the last few years. It just maybe hasn't clicked fully at senior level this year. That doesn't mean that they won't knock up to Kilcoleman on Saturday and maybe produce a big performance. So I just think I think Duhara maybe will have too much experience. Cueva Maher's going very well. Kieran Maher, Amy Kennedy, Jenny Grace. I think they have too much experience. I think the other quarterfinal probably I fancy Clonoulty Rossmore to come through that one against Thurles Sarsfields. I saw Clonoulty last weekend against Nina. I thought they were very, very good. Like, Cotavan was brilliant at like 2-11, but Emer Burke got 2-6 from play. Like, they just look, and they could afford to take off Casey Hennessy at half time, but she was playing a ladies football match the following day. So they look like they're coming strong. It looks like they have loads of scoring power. Thurles, the group stage campaign sort of petered out from a small bit. They had suffered a heavy loss to Thurles, or to Burgess Duhara. Great to see Karen Kennedy back. She missed all the campaign with Tipperary through injury this year. She's back, and look, they're only up from intermediate a couple of years. I think their best days are ahead of them, but I think Clonoulty's experience and momentum will get them through to the semi-finals, and I think you'll have 4 terrific semi-finals in a couple of weeks' time if you got there.
Yeah, the intermediate championship then sees Care meet Borrisoleigh. Newport Ballynahinch are up against Borlath and Duala. Toomevara against Kilruane McDonough's in Toom. They're all on Saturday. And on Sunday then, Gortnahoe Glengool meet Cashel King Cormac's.
Yeah, I'd Gortnahoe and Junior Cashel, I think is Junior B, I think. So, yeah, no, the intermediate championship, that's still around the round robin stage, but very, very tight between Borrisoleigh and Care, Newport, Kilruane, and maybe somebody, Shannon Rovers, it looks like it's 5 into 4 for the semis, but it wouldn't maybe Borlahan maybe still have an outside chance. But yeah, that championship is moving along pretty nicely.
Yeah, and then I suppose the last thing on the agenda is the football quarterfinals last weekend. So Moyle Rovers beat Ardfinnan 12-11. Clonmel Commercials saw off Arravale Rovers, fairly dismissed them, 21 points to 1-2. We've already mentioned Upperchurch Strumban seeing off JK Brackens 1-11-10, and then Lockmore Castleiney had just too much for Kilsheal and Kilcash, 110 to 11 points. So we're down to the final 4.
Yeah, sure, we're down to the final 4, and you could nearly have picked 3 of the 4 at the start of the campaign, even though both Moyle Rovers and Lockmore, like, potentially those results could have gone the other way. Like Ardfinnan were 5 points up on Moyle Rovers midway through the second half, and I don't know whether they got a bit of white line fever or what, or Moyle Rovers just went for broke, but the Moyle Rovers reeled off, I think it's 6 points in a row to win the game, like, so, or 5 of the last 6, I think, to win the game. So, and it is, and of course, they're up against Commercials now in the semi-final, the way the draw has worked out. So, Clonmel Derby there. So, I think Commercials very, very strong last weekend. Michael Quinnivan was back. So, like, they won that game without Jack Kennedy, and I think one of the other Kennedys didn't play either. So just shows you the depth of the squad they have. But like that Moyle Rovers Commercials game is going to be so tight. Like, you think while Commercials have most of the stars, there's so much respect between those two teams. I think that'll be a very low scoring tight game. Moyle Rovers have the potential to take them out, and then you have the other semi-final coming up Sunday week. Lockmore against Upperchurch, 2 local clubs, no rivals too, and you'd say you think Lockmore should probably have too much to get through that one, but like, I think Upperchurch, that is a game Upperchurch have absolutely nothing to lose. They'll be raging underdogs, and that's where maybe they'll feel that they could go all the way and get to a county final. And like, they're improving year on year. They were very good against Commercials in the group stage. I saw most of that game live streamed a few weeks ago. They were very, very good. But and look, they're following the Lockmore blueprint of how you can be a dual club, and it's just great to see. Like, and maybe more clubs have to do. It's just you can do it, and like, all you're doing is playing a match every weekend. Sure, and they said there's very little training during the week. I'm sure for their coaches and mentors, it's in some ways it's nearly easy at this time of the year, where unless you just get a glut of injuries, and look, that can happen. But in fairness to Upperchurch and Lockmore and Brackens and Commercial Stroke St. Mary's, they seem to be managing it very, very well. Like, they don't seem to be getting the glut of injuries that you would think would be happening, trying to follow both codes at this stage of the year. Yeah,
and both Lockmore and Upperchurch possibly chasing a county double. Imagine if Upperchurch did what Lockmore did last year. That'd be something else.
That's it. And sure, like Ballina through to the semi-finals of the intermediate football. They beat Galtee Rovers last week, beat them comfortably enough, which was a big surprise. But they're up against Grange Mochler in the semi-final. Are probably the hot favourites, but they're a young Grange Mochler team, so I think Ballina have a chance. And you have Mullinahone against Golden in the other semi-final. So look, the last down to the last 4 of the football championship. I suppose maybe some of the getting to the semi-finals, you could pick maybe some of the teams who are going to get there. Now we're getting to a stage where maybe it's hard to pick the winners of the individual games, which is probably what we want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's it for this week. Don't forget to pick up a copy of the Lena Guardian, and we'll see you next week, Shane.
Yep.